an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Travelers, Season 2, Episode 1, Ave Machina. In this episode, somebody misfires. Well, not exactly. They were just wrong. They just had the wrong information and winds up in the Twin Towers on 9/11. It does not go the way you would expect if I told you this beforehand. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. First of all, thank you very much to Michael for not only commissioning this episode, but for purchasing a voyeur add-on to the episode so that everybody could hang out with me while I watched it live. If you are on the Crowdcast, there is a previous one that you can go to watch that stream. This was a really good episode to watch live. This was full of surprises and a lot of stuff I kind of a moment before it happened, I was like, oh shit, this is about to happen, isn't it? But even so, it wasn't I guess so far ahead that there was no fun in it for me. I was just sort of picking it up as I went along, and it's still, even things that I guessed, it didn't go the way I expected exactly. So this episode starts off with somebody getting taken over by a traveler, which almost every single episode starts off this way with a new traveler coming in. This guy is Keith Mars from Veronica Mars. I'm sure this actor has a name of his own, but I don't know it. He is Keith Mars, and that is who he is, and that's it. And when I saw that he was coming in and going to be likely a recurring player, I got very, very excited. So the issue is that he is coming in here as he's supposed to be coming in to Andrew Corrigan's body. Andrew Corrigan is the stockbroker on the phone when Keith Mars enters his office. And the problem winds up being that their information had Andrew Corrigan at his desk taking a conference call at the time of the planes hitting. But what it turns out was going on, he was having a technical issue with his computer. So this dude comes in and takes his spot at the computer and is sitting there as completely takes Andrew Corrigan's place as he, and what's really funny about this is that a little bit of business, he's the IT guy. He comes in, the dude says something to him just got to turn it off and on again, huh? And he's like, no, it's not that. But he does just turn it off again and turn it back on again, sort of waiting to, you get the impression that maybe that is exactly what's going on. Nevertheless, he gets taken over. And the way this is all presented is that we are hearing him talking about this, saying, in my dream, this is always how it goes. So initially I'm watching this like it's something that really happened. A few minutes in, I'm like, okay, maybe it's a dream that it didn't exactly go that way. And maybe, he's just thinking about what would have gone wrong if such and such went happened instead. But you find out later that he is indeed talking about a memory, and it's just also a recurring dream. This is something that actually happened. So he realizes he's in the wrong body. I don't know. I'll be honest here, guys. I don't know how he realizes as quickly as he does that he's not in the body he is supposed to be in. This is the only thing about this episode that I found a little puzzling. He doesn't look in the mirror. He just looks down at himself and his hands. And I guess maybe he was shown a picture and like saw that the dude that he's supposed to be in his body is like very fit. And he realized that he's got a gut, and maybe looked at his hands and realized that he's maybe too old. But that was the only thing, was that he really quickly realizes that he's in the wrong body. So he tries to send an email alerting them that that he was sent in the wrong body, and the computer freezes up and he isn't able to send the email. He has practiced doing this, as he says, hundreds of times, but everything is going wrong, and he's realizing there's no time. Now, first hint that I should have picked up on, he gets up and looks out the window, and he's looking down on Manhattan. It's clearly Manhattan, and he is way, way above even the tallest buildings in the city. I should have realized that meant that he was in one of the Twin Towers, but I didn't start to catch on to what was happening until he was in the stairwell. When, like, even he yells to everybody, like, if you don't leave, you're all going to die. Even that, I thought, well, maybe that somebody's setting a bomb off. You know, like, I still wasn't putting together exactly what day it was and what was happening here. So, as he's recounting this dream to what turns out to be a therapist who believes that he has paranoid delusions, does not buy any of this story, he says, the mission's a failure, so why should I sacrifice myself? And this is the one thing I didn't quite understand. The mission's a failure. The whole thing is, as he tells her later, he was supposed to jump into the body of this stockbroker and prove to them that the system works that they're setting up. He was like, I don't know if he was the first traveler, but he was certainly one of them, right? This is a test case. And I guess he's determined that since he can't, because the point was, he goes into this dude's body, he gets killed, and there's no trace of him. And so he has sent the email to confirm that this worked before he dies. And that's it. He was meant to be a sacrifice without any further effect on the future, because he was immediately killed after sending the email saying it worked. And he realizes that he can't send the email. So he's just kind of like, well, I guess I may as well just leave now. And I'm kind of like, look, okay, I'm not mad at you for wanting to save your own life, but there's like 700 computers in this building. Everybody thinks you're the IT guy. Just go use another computer, my friend. Like, genuinely, he could have. He's saying there's no time, but he has a moment to empty out the safe, make an announcement to everybody, get down several flights of stairs. He could have completed this assignment. I'm not entirely buying this dude's story. What it feels like happened here is it didn't go exactly according to plan, and he just kind of had a panic reaction and was like, well, if I can't do it the precise way they instructed, I guess I just can't do it. Which, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of this. Again, with the logistics, maybe he had to send the email from that exact computer. It's possible. Okay, maybe that is true. But nevertheless, he winds up deciding he doesn't need to sacrifice himself. And that quickly turns into, I will do what I need to do to stay alive in the 21st. I am not giving up this life. And that's a real different thing. He starts off as someone who's sort of sympathetic, that you're kind of like, well, I get what you're doing here. But then he begins to spin off into, wait a second though. Now you're trying to like live an entire life and just be happy on your own. And you're a soldier. You don't get to do that. That's not part of the deal. Again, I'm not mad at him for that. I get that. But he's over here trying to sort of rationalize why he did what he did. And it just sounds to me like a bunch of excuses. So he goes into this dude's safe, and sure enough, I saw that safe behind him when he was, getting taken over. The scenes where their brains are being assaulted by the signal fuck me up. I hate watching them. It's just, these actors are way too good at making it look like they're in horrible pain. But I saw behind him as he's writhing around in the chair that a safe is wide open. And I thought that might come into play, but I was like, that's not usually what travelers want. They don't rob people. Like, they are given teammates who find ways to access money, but they don't need to steal things. So I saw that, but then I was like, well, whatever. Nope. Turns out to be hugely relevant. He goes into this safe and he takes not only all the money that was in there, but also all of the stock certificates, which apparently they still count for something even if you don't have the ID of the person they belong to. I don't know how stock certificates work, but doesn't that seem like a real flaw in the system? Wouldn't you think that, like, if you have a stock certificate, that it should be, like, registered to somebody with, like, several layers of ID that you need to be able to sort of cash that in? I don't know how that works. But, yeah, I was a little bit surprised because he mentions it later on. Ms. T says, yeah, the mission was to send an email. Okay. Michael says maybe they're bearer bonds. He calls them stock certificates later. I'm pretty positive. But it doesn't really matter that much. I'm just like, there are times where I realize that there are large parts of the world that I don't know at all how they function. And I'm constantly surprised at how differently things work than how I thought they worked. So yeah, he makes this announcement to the room of people, and then he runs down the stairwell and he says something about how I didn't even know what floor I was on. I just knew I had to run, that there was no time. And that was when I was like, oh, I know what this is. And eventually he manages to get outside and he is deciding what the fuck to do. He finally ditches the ID, the whole wallet of the man whose body he's in. And he gets in a cab and he goes to the Pacific Northwest. He basically tries to get as far away from New York while remaining on the same continent for some reason as possible. And he is able to get in with I don't know what you would call the dude who he works for. I keep wanting to say venture capitalist. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what those words mean. I'm going to go look up venture capitalist. According to Google, a venture capitalist is a private equity investor that provides capital to companies exhibiting high growth potential in exchange for an equity stake. That actually sounds kind of correct. Did I get that right without knowing what the words meant? Well, okay. And because he fucking knows what history is, he is able to help guide this dude on investing exactly where he needs to. And he tells the guy that he manages to be right all the time because he has this amazing software algorithm thing going on. And eventually the dude gets offered $78 million for the software. But spoiler alert, he's the software. And like a total jag, he tells the dude this. And what's amazing is that he has managed to convince everybody around him that he just is like a terrible phobic. And so they are willing to not use their phones and cameras and stuff around him. But there comes several times in his life where people think it's somewhat harmless if they just go ahead and do their little thing, phobia or not, because they just think it's something that makes him uncomfortable. But they don't really think there's any danger in it. So they had been previously honoring his phobia and trying to be respectful of that, but not like understanding, because there's no way for him to actually tell them that there's genuine danger in them using this stuff. I mean, he could tell them, but they're not going to believe him. So, and I mean, guys, come on, let's be honest. How many dudes like this have we all met who like really genuinely, sincerely seem to believe that there is a serious danger with something that is, to us, pretty benign, somewhat every day. And, you know, it's easy to watch stuff like this and just be like, why don't people just fucking listen to him? Like, what harm could it possibly do to just listen to the guy? But if we're honest with ourselves, we would not listen to this dude either at all. We would just be like, ah, fuck. It's that guy who thinks that computers can kill him. Like, you know, that he would be the guy around the office that you're like, oh God, Jerry's here. Put your phone away. You know, he gets about the phone, whatever. It would just be, you would just completely dismiss him. And that's what's so frustrating to him, is that he understands that, he knows that. So there's really no point. Making it into a phobia and hoping that people are respectful is the best he can do. And I mean, the main problem here with this plot is that this dude is supposed to live in the Pacific Northwest in a city, and he isn't on camera all the goddamn time, being tracked in a million other different ways. I don't buy it. You know, like I would assume he had to get photos taken to set up his new life. And most things nowadays that take photos are hooked into the internet somehow. If he so much as goes into a convenience store, there are cameras all over the place now, and a lot of cameras feed to people's phones. They don't even, you know, maybe it was too early when all of this was going on, that some of that technology didn't exist. Cameras to phones is something that has happened within the last like 5 years. So maybe it was too soon, but Michael's saying that exact thing as I'm saying. But nevertheless, we were linked into the system after 9/11 pretty fucking hard, because they began to get a lot more aggressive with tracking our every move all over the place. And I would just, first of all, love to know, he might mention it, how he winds up in the Pacific Northwest, because we see him like get in a cab, but I don't know how he got on a plane. He must have driven or rented a car. I don't know. Stolen a car, for all I know. Because like everybody knows, travel at 9/11 in the 2 weeks afterwards was practically impossible. Everything was shut down. Everybody was waiting on like all of these standbys, because their flights were canceled, and so the next flight they were like due to go on that one. Yada yada yada. Hugabug says, I thought he said train. Did he? Even that though, you know, I feel like that would still be something that he would like. 9/11 was just such a thing that I just assume it would be more difficult for him to do literally everything without being on camera somewhere in there. And it's fine. It's not really a huge deal for me that this but I do think if we're going to be like having this sort of storyline, my expectation is that this is a guy who goes and builds himself a fucking cabin somewhere and gets himself some plastic surgery and then is unrecognizable and living off the grid. And that's how he manages to like continue. And maybe after he gets the surgery, he's able to continue living in the city. But there's too many holes in the way this is allegedly supposed to work and the way that life actually works. It doesn't entirely line up for me. Like the reason that I have a hard time accepting it is because this show wants me to accept that his wife simply taking his photo on her Razr phone is enough for her to get targeted in the same house sitting next to him in bed. But like I said, a million other things that I'm sure are taking his photo all over the place aren't enough. I don't know what the difference would be. So that's the only thing that I kind of was like, I was really surprised to see how much of a life he was able to live. He's able to go quite a long time before anybody ever finds out where he's at. And even like we see him, and it turns out that he's in this like library study. Can we talk about this fucking library, guys? This is the fucking stuff of dreams. Owen and I, the other day, as a fun little thought exercise, we're on a walk. And I was asking him if you could like redesign different parts of our house, what you would choose. And I'll be damned if a huge paneled wood study with giant windows, a window seat, a desk looking out a window, and a giant fireplace in one wall wasn't pre-fucking-cisely what I said. And this dickhead is sitting in this near magical room, not appreciating any of it, I assume, because rich people don't appreciate anything. Now, this guy, granted, came from the future during a time where he was dying of some terrible disease and probably does appreciate it. But I can't think of him that way because I hate him. Because he has this library, not because of his personality. He owns the thing I want, therefore he's my enemy. So he tells her that he survived and they won't forgive that. And she's saying, so you think that whoever sent you on this mission intends to punish you? And he says, they're already here. I've seen the changes in the histories that I remember, and they've already found me twice. They'll be coming for me again. And it's a pretty fucking baller opening because like all that happens before the opening credits even, which is intense. And I'm sitting there like, what are we doing? So then we have the credits and here's McLaren pacing around an interrogation room. And thus begins the next section of this episode that's pretty intense. McLaren and his allies are all locked up. Everybody but Trevor and Grace, who are in the hospital with gunshot wounds. The farmer is dead. And these guys still have their comms working. Poor Trevor's comm was removed, which I assume now that everybody is a traveler in that building, basically, Trevor will get his comm back. But whenever the comms are either removed or disabled, I get real bajiggity about it. It feels you're too vulnerable. It's like them losing their cell phones, you know? I hate it. And they wind up disabling them like when they believe that things are kind of at an end. And I assume they can just turn them back on. But it is kind of like a moment of silence, you know? It is kind of just like, oh, wow, they're disconnecting from one another because they feel that their mission has failed. And it's just kind of moving. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So Forbes comes in to talk to McLaren. The guy who plays Forbes is such a weird mixture. He's one of those people, and I bet you guys all know what I mean. I bet there's somebody for you that this happens with. In some lights and in some positions of the camera, he seems like he is fine as hell. And then every now and then, I'm just like, what is up with this dude? He looked weird. I can't decide. Is he attractive? Is he not attractive? I go back and forth. I can't decide. There, like he's got an appeal. There is something about him that I like, but I just can't I can't get a handle on him. He's got nice shoulders. I'll say that. Got a nice little V shape going on there. So McLaren tries to tell Forbes to destroy the device by whatever means possible. And Forbes obviously is not interested in following instructions. This isn't like he's being given advice by somebody who is involved in some sort of plot, maybe terrorism, who knows what. No, he's not going to risk his job and his freedom, because he might get locked up as well, to destroy a device that nobody will even tell him what the fuck it does. You know, it turns out that there was some sort of fail-safe built into it, that if they tried to take it apart and look at what happened inside of it, it would explode. So all of these people are basically on death row, but they don't know it yet. They haven't tried to open it. They're waiting for the team to show them what it does inadvertently. They do not get their wish, but that's later. So McLaren is trying to talk to Forbes and convince him what's going on. And we see Carly getting questioned as well. Philip is trying to give advice over the comm, and Marcy is telling him to shut the fuck up. Carly eventually just tells the dude who's questioning her that she's not talking to him anymore. I can't remember the name of the agent that's in charge of this investigation who comes in and interrupts Forbes, but he is the kind of dude that really convinces me that he's in charge of shit, but also a total nightmare to work for. And later on, one of the guys says something about, when Forbes comes back and is like, what the fuck are we doing here? I got a text. Somebody says, yeah, he does this. And so that pretty much confirmed my suspicion, because this guy just has a swagger to him that you get the feeling that he's he is pretty good at his job. He probably has earned some of that swagger, but also that he maybe was born with that swagger before he earned it. And he just lucked into also earning it, but it wasn't, the swagger did not come with the talent. The talent happened to come eventually, but the swagger was going to be there either way. Michael called him Agent Smarmfield and then corrected it to Wakefield. All right, noted. I'm going to call him Smarm. So as we see what's going on with everybody, eventually we are presented with Trevor's removed comm, and he's talking about the tech that went into this and how it's based on a material that isn't even workable yet, that it's something that's sort of an experimental thing. We get to see the surgery that they're doing on Trevor and eventually also on Grace. Guys, I hate watching surgery on TV. They showed more than I was comfortable with. I'll just say that. I hate it so much. It's bad enough to see that scene where Marcy cuts herself up and she's in the bathtub and there's fucking blood everywhere. But when it's somebody unconscious with just a giant fucking hole in the middle of their body, and there's all bits of gauze and tissue around it to help soak up the blood and separate that area, it's too much. It's they've got the lid taken off of them like a fucking cookie jar, and people are just reaching in there and rummaging the fuck around. I can't deal with it. I hate it so much. The shit that we do, we just break people's ribs open to get to their heart. We're like, oh, that's in the way. Crack. I know it's not really how it is, but it's a little bit how it is. It's more how it is than I want it to be. Let's just say that. Makes me so uncomfortable. But yeah, so we're getting the updates on everybody. Eventually we have Trevor's parents getting updated. I felt so bad for them. They don't know what the fuck is going on. And they are told that their son may not regain the use of his legs. Eventually, because I really was oh no, are we doing this? But eventually, a traveler doctor comes in, and he has fucking nanites that he is able to inject into Grace. And evidently, Grace, because she's super important, I'm assuming, and because she has that really low number, she got approved for the nanites, but Trevor didn't. So Grace winds up doing a kind of a transfusion so that the nanites in her system also get transferred to his and will repair his spine. And she has to program them on the iPad while they're going into his body. The wildest thing. I will admit to still not entirely trusting Grace. So when she told him that she was putting the nanites into him to help him walk again, there was a part of me that was are you? What are you doing, lady? What are you really doing, though? But I do believe that is exactly what she was doing. There was just a moment of like paranoia there for me. So, okay, David. Let's talk about fucking David. Most heartbreaking thing in the entire episode. Why does David break my heart all the time? I can't handle it anymore. This poor dude. When he like breaks at the end of this episode, I was kind of like, yeah, fair. I feel like that is about the spot, if I were him, that I would lose it also. He has really held it together shockingly well for some guy who is just a social worker. He's not out here trying to have high adventure. He's not out here trying to like get in moments of peril where his life is on the fucking edge of a knife. This is a dude who lives in a lovely apartment, who is a little bit soft. And I don't mean that in like a real pejorative way, but I mean, obviously this is a guy who enjoys his comfort. He is like me. And he found a girl that he really likes, who against all of his ethics, he got involved with, but was super cautious and careful about because he's not a creep at all. And he just keeps getting fucking put through this ringer. So he falls in love with Marcy. Marcy gets her memory erased, doesn't even fucking remember him. She teaches him before she loses her memory to do all of this like medical shit that he's super uncomfortable with. And he is like wondering where the fuck she is, getting phone calls that maybe she's going to be gone forever. Then when she finally does come back into his life and they have one night of wonderful, perfect passion, then she's fucking deleted, doesn't know who he is. Then when she finally comes back and seems like she's at least going to be healthy and maybe they can start to put the pieces back together and maybe she can't even remember. Then some fucking dude takes him hostage and she kills him and gets the woman across the street to say, I guess it's not the woman that gave false testimony. It's that the cop reports false testimony because the cop is a traveler. And after all that, the thing that sends him over the edge is coming home to the bloodstain on the floor. He was in prison. Well, not in prison. He was in custody to be questioned when Ray is assigned to him because Philip like pulled some strings there, I guess. First of all, I never thought I'd be so happy to see Ray, but like completely I was. This dude, he's just really like likable against my will. Do you know what I mean? There's just something about him that I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm on your side, even though you are real disreputable looking. And he is, though. But he comes in and I was just sort of like, oh, it's this guy. And I just like, I don't know. I always feel weird when a show manages to make me like somebody that I've been kind of like, I know is not entirely a trustworthy person, but he's still a pretty good person. We've seen him do some stuff that he didn't need to be doing. He could have like just taken the money for himself. He didn't do it. So I kind of trust him. But even with all that, even all that questioning, even Ray fucking with him and telling him that he might do like 10 years in prison, none of that breaks him until he sees the bloodstain. And this is what I mean when I say that me and David are a lot alike. Because that's the shit that sends me over the edge. I like my things. You guys can see the room behind me right now. You can see the blanket I'm wrapped up in. You can see the headphones I'm wearing. I like pretty things. I like my home to be what I want it to be. I can deal with things on the daily going wrong. I can deal with mishaps and things like that. But once you get to property damage, for example, there was a day where a lot had gone wrong, but I was pretty much holding it together. And then I was eating tomato soup and I spilled it on my brand new first time wearing it yellow dress. And that was it. I just burst into tears. I could not deal with it. Like, just come on, don't fuck with my stuff. And this is a giant blood. It's not giant. It could be worse. But it's a significantly sized blood stain on his beautiful wood floor in a spot that will be tricky to cover. And nobody gave any shits about it. That's the thing that you can see really bothers him, is that, like, there's a blood stain here, and all they did was leave a card for a cleaning service, even though somebody could have done something. And he's really just disgusted at how not a factor he is. They came, they got the facts, they took him away. I mean, one could argue they left a biohazard in his house, you know? And the fact that he's winds up like cleaning that up by himself with no gloves or anything in the year of our COVID 2020 makes me extremely twitchy. I don't know about y'all, but I just really felt him on this. I really did. Like, when Marcy finally comes home, because spoilers, they get out, she comes upon a David who is just, he's not even in tears. I feel like that would have been easier to bear. He's just bewildered and sad, but he's also hyped up on caffeine because he drinks tea to comfort himself, which again, relatable. And there's this lost sense to him that just kills you to see. You know, he wants to be good. He wants to be a good boy. It's just who he is. It's in his nature. And he keeps trying to be a good boy, and he just keeps getting stabbed in the dick as a reward. And you gotta get to a point in your life where you're like, fuck, what's the point, you know? I really hope that things between Marcy and David wind up solidifying into a relationship again. She isn't the same Marcy that we used to know. Nevertheless, I think it could still work. Also, I want to mention the scene where they show Marcy the footage of her beating the shit out of these dudes is so great, because she is able to very convincingly say that she has no memory of this at all, because she doesn't. It's a true fact. Granted, that's absolutely her, and we all know it, but she can say, if she were on a lie detector, she'd pass with flying colors. I don't remember doing this. I have no idea what happened. I mean, she does have an idea what happened, I guess, but... So we get a look at Jeff, and sure enough, they found this girl's parents killed, and Jeff is still having to like hand in his badge, and apparently his gun was taken away for forensics. But the optics on this are really bad. And this dude is saying, if you can at least get Carly to come in and give testimony, it will go from being, you know, bad guy cop to the cop who tragically had to be the one to put down this fucking unhinged teenage girl. And it's the kind of thing that, like, I understand the show playing it the way that they do, but knowing what we know about how laxly a lot of cops are dealt with when they kill innocent children, it's hard to watch and really take seriously. Like, I just, you know what I mean? And Jeff is also just such a fucking scumbag that even though what he was doing in that moment is exactly what he claims he was doing, he's telling the truth. Everything that went down, he's telling exactly what happened. It's not his fault that she wasn't there to support his story. But I just hate him so much. I just want him to go down real bad. And Carly, meanwhile, this episode, is throwing a fit about her son being in custody and he needs to be with his mother. Are you keeping me here all day? And eventually she says on her comm to McLaren, permission to bust the fuck out of here. And I was like, wait, what? You can just do that? Well, it turns out you can if they let you. I really want to know how they knew this was all going to go down. Did they scan them all for comms? I mean, I don't think they have that technology to do. I guess they assume that all of them have it. If Trevor has one, that they all probably have it. But when she asks for permission, they synchronize on 3, 2, 1, and then each attack the person questioning them and bust right the fuck up out of the rooms that they are being held in. All of them seem to be in rooms that don't even have like a lock on them. We see Marcy has like a swipe key that she uses, but everybody else seems like they're just able to walk right the fuck up out of there. And I was kind of like, I said while I was watching it, the doors aren't even locked. And then when there's nobody outside the door, you'd think there'd be somebody standing guard, not even necessarily for like a concern that they are going to escape, so much as just somebody to monitor and let other people know, like, oh, this interrogation room is in use, or, you know, whatever. I was really like, this is so easy. How is this so easy? They're meeting up in the hallways, deciding what they're going to do. They're able to like have a lot of time to just reconvene and chat. And I was just really like, how? Well, it turns out that this is all a setup. And I'm really glad, because otherwise I was not going to be taking it seriously that these people have what looks like the entire floor to themselves without running into a single other solitary person. They eventually come across one dude who they take down, and Philip takes his gun. But that's like the only one. And I really was like, what? How? Well, it turns out that they have constructed, or I don't even know if you could, because apparently if you like take it apart, there's like a fail safe on it. I don't know how they got it into the gym without taking it apart. I'd be real curious to hear any of y'all theories on that, because supposedly if it's taken apart, it will blow up. But it's in a gym. It's a huge piece of equipment. How did they do this without taking it apart in the first place? Any theories on that? Whatever. They go in there, and McLaren looks around, and the lights turn on as they're like sort of realizing that shit isn't what they thought. He lifts his gun. He seems to sense that things aren't quite right, and he checks the bullets, and he pulls the trigger. Now, it looks like there are bullets in there. Are those like blanks? Blanks still make a sound, though. These don't shoot at all. I don't know how they made it look like there were bullets and there weren't. But whatever the case, they did this to see whether or not the crew would actually try and destroy the machine if left to their own devices. And I think they're a little bit startled at the fact that they did try and destroy it. They're hoping now that if they realize that they can't destroy it, maybe they will try and use it. Maybe you can show us what it does. Of course they don't. But eventually, it's really funny too, guys. Every time I see Carly, she keeps like protesting that she's just a single mom. No big deal. But she's wearing these like pleather pants that combined with like her all black outfit and like leather jacket. I mean, she looks like fucking La Femme Nikita. It's not really shocking that they're all like rolling their eyes when she tries to claim that she's just an ordinary single mom. Girl, you look like fucking Black Widow. Stop it. So they all get put back into custody, separated and under actual security this time. As all of this is going on, we're flicking back and forth into the therapy session, psychiatry session. I guess it's therapy probably, with Keith Mars. I don't remember what his name is, but he's going to be Keith Mars. And I hope you guys are all ready to deal with that. And he kind of like, he gets agitated at a point because he's trying to explain to the doctor. He says, you see, we knew it was possible to send messages directly to the 21st through a host, but we projected a 40% chance that an adult mind might not be able to withstand the shock of transfer. That's the whole reason I volunteered to go first. No one would have to die that wasn't going to. Artificial intelligence isn't supposed to be capable of taking a life that isn't about to end. The director shouldn't have risked it. Do you understand? And she interrupts and is just like, no, I don't. And it was kind of a great moment. Like her frustration, and you can see like her rising fear. I really don't feel like this woman's super good at her job. I'm just going to say it. I'm not trying to say that I would deal with this better, but I'm not allegedly a licensed and trained professional. And this can't be the weirdest thing she's ever heard, can it? Like, this dude, he has managed to make a fortune, obviously, based on all of the assertions that she keeps trying to claim are of no value or relevance. And yet she's standing in the midst of the evidence that he is correct. And I'm not trying to say if she were smarter, she'd believe him. Like I said, I don't think anybody would believe him. That, you know, other than probably other conspiracy theorists, to be honest. But she's supposed to be a professional who is trained to deal with paranoid delusion. And she starts getting so twitchy. And I'm just like, if you can't handle this, why are you doing this job? You shouldn't be as concerned about this as you are if you know what you're doing. You should be aware of the risks here and have coping mechanisms to handle it, and have heard stranger things, I would think. How did he find you? You know? But yeah, the question there for me is, because I had said last episode how wild it is that they are able to take over the body of that girl who did not get, there was a misfire. And so she wound up not being taken over by a traveler. And then realizing that, like, basically, if you had been supposed to die, forever afterward, you are forfeit and they can come at you at any time. But they came and took his wife, and she wasn't meant to die. So that was something that he is just kind of like, how are they able to do that? And why would the director take that risk at all? That's not how the director is even supposed to work. Kind of asking some of the questions that I've been asking, and I guess questions that are raised once we find out about the factions. Like, was that the director? Like, what direction are things going in with the use of this technology if they're starting to make exceptions like that and come at people who had not been supposed to die? Because eventually they come at his partner, and he also had not been supposed to die. So in order to stop him, they're just out here killing people now, which is not how it's supposed to work at all. And this comes up also with the travelers when they realize that this fucking bomb thing that's built into the frame device, they start to ask, like, well, if you put a device in a thing and it will ensure their deaths, and then you take them over because their deaths were about to happen because of a thing you put there, you are setting people up to be taken. Like, you're fucking with events in order to get likely bodies wherever you want them, which isn't supposed to be how any of this fucking works. But nobody seems to be talking about the fact that, because somebody says, well, the director said to build that frame, but we don't know that. There's a faction that has been trying to fuck with shit. And it might have said to build that, and the director might not have anything to do with it. We're starting to get into like real squishy theory here that it's hard for me to hold in my brain all at once and keep straight. Let's see. Michael says, serious question. How do you feel after a whole season about it just calling it the 21st? I never got used to it. Oh, that doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, I'm pretty used to it. What bothered you about it? Mrs. T says, I think it weirded her out that he isn't presenting as a paranoid schizophrenic usually presents because he's not sick, really. She's twitchy because she's used to actual sick people. That's a pretty good point, Miss C. I guess I see that. If he's like not exhibiting most of the markers that she's used to seeing, she's going to feel really like off her game and not know how to assess him because she's been trained to look for certain things that aren't there. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. It's like, you know, anything that I like that theory too, Miss T, because my problem is like, well, she's an older woman too. So she's not just somebody trained. She's trained and obviously has been experienced in this field for a time. But when you are experienced, it makes things that don't line up with your experience all the more upsetting and baffling. So I like that. I could see that. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. We're getting back into, the whole thing with McLaren. Everybody gets separated. There's a funny part where he tries to say something about how it's time to self-destruct. And everybody who's like watching them in the surveillance room kind of looks at each other because they don't really know what to say or do. Because they don't know if this is like a real thing. And then we see Forbes pulling up to his house and then getting a text saying, come to the gymnasium immediately. And he gets this look on his face and he's like, fuck. And he turns around, goes to the gym, asks everybody, like, do you know what this is about? And then we see Smarm come in and he's like, what the fuck, guys? You texted me to come back. And everybody else is like, what do you mean? No, you texted us. And I had already been like, once everybody said, oh, we're all here. He asked for all of us. I was like, oh, they're getting got. And sure enough, as soon as he says, what? The light changes. A pulse goes out from the machine and all of them begin to crumple over and are all taken over. Now, look, I know it's fucked up because these are all real people with real lives. But I am delighted at the fact that McLaren is going to have an entire team of fucking fellow FBI agents that are all in on this shit with him. And he isn't going to have to hide a lot of stuff anymore. I mean, and it's not really like, that's not entirely fair. There's a bug on my mic. Can you guys hear that thing? I can see it flying or like walking around on there. Get out of there. He had a moment like, in the episode where that one dude was supposed to blow up the cam girl location, where the dude thought he was being interrogated by a bunch of normies and one traveler. And then we find out the room is full of travelers. So obviously there's enough of them involved with shit. I guess the guy just thought he was being held by the FBI though, and they weren't FBI at all, and it wasn't an FBI facility, I guess. I don't know how that works. I don't really know how a whole thing was like handled. But I'm assuming that McLaren knows some of these people other than just Forbes. And I might be wrong. He might only know Forbes. But I'm just like, this is going to change things, I would think, you know? I'm wondering about like the people who are in the surveillance room. Do they get affected also? Like they are far enough away that I wouldn't think something like this would work on them. But we can't have them watch this all and then not be affected and have that go unremarked. So I guess they would have to be caught up as well. So we have the scene where Keith Mars tells her about his partner having an aneurysm. And she's hearing now that 2 people close to him had an aneurysm and begins to think that he must have killed them. And he, of course, knows that's what she's going to think. And he tries to say, look, I didn't hurt them. I am not trying to hurt you. I am no danger to anybody. I am just trying to get this shit off my chest. And she tries to tell him, because he wants to set up another appointment, that he needs to be on medication, and she doesn't think she's actually helping. But he then, points out, I can tell you this stuff. You aren't allowed to tell people because of, doctor-patient confidentiality. And I'm paying you a lot of fucking money. I think this is an okay situation for both of us. You'll be fine. But she's obviously pretty fucking shaken. And when she goes to her car, this dead-faced Asian guy who looks like a fucking henchman straight out of a Bond flick brings her her phone and a wad of cash in an envelope on a silver tray. It's amazing. And you see her trying to be cool. She's very shaken. When he knocks on the window, she almost hits the ceiling. And then her phone rings. And it says unknown. And she takes a moment and then doesn't answer it. And I liked that moment a lot, because I'm assuming this is her being like, I don't buy any of this. You're crazy. And then she has a moment of truth here where she's right outside this guy's house and she's holding this tech, and she kind of thinks, okay, better safe than sorry. How about I just put this down and I don't answer it, and we just go home with our big wad of money. And I really liked this. It's not really that she believes him, but it's like when you get told that saying Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times makes Bloody Mary appear. Even if you don't buy that shit works, you're not gonna do it, because why try it? Why risk it? Why do it? And I'm really curious to see if we will see another session between the 2 of them again, So now we go to our crew waiting in the hospital to find out how things are going with Trevor and Grace. And Marcy, who had been, the medical tech for their group, is going and investigating what's going on with all of them by spying on the computers and seeing what their status is. And Philip is talking about the circular reasoning of the, setting these people up to die and then taking them over. And it's Carly who says the director wouldn't allow that kind of tech in the 21st. So McLaren says the director was the one who ordered to have it built in the first place. Or Philip says that, I think. And I was like, did nobody hear that about the faction, and that maybe they don't know what the director said to do and what not? Like, nobody seems to be talking about that. And I don't really know why. But regardless, we find out that the Trevor and Grace are both looking like they are going to recover and be just fine. We have McLaren driving Carly home, and Carly telling him that she has decided she's not going to kill him. And he's like real sort of, I don't want to say ungrateful. It's not that. It seems more like he is being so formal and professional with her that she seems disgusted by it, because she's realizing that he's going to pretty much stick to, we can't carry our relationship over. And she just decided to flout a direct order as she sees it. And he's not even like going to take that into consideration and try and, revive things between the 2 of them. Honestly, though, I stand by not really liking Carly. I find her frustrating. And then we have the scene with David cleaning up and Marcy putting her arm around him. It's really just too much. And then the final scene of the episode. Keith Mars gets on the computer Again, I guess he must have computers that are like not connected to the internet, or like it must be like a closed system or something. And then we see him typing out, "When are you from?" And there is a dude hooked up to an IV in a wheelchair, bloody as hell, looking like he has been like punched, definitely tortured in some way, or at least in like a bad car accident and just not cleaned up. And he's typing, "When are you from?" So we find out that he is the one who was questioning our people when they got kidnapped, which I guess means that he's part of the other faction, I suppose. Due to, it seems, the fact that the director began to do shit that as an AI system, it wasn't supposed to be able to do. So I think that's going to be what we find out the faction is based on, is that one group trusts the director as an impartial piece of software that isn't going to be susceptible to human emotion. And then there's another faction that's seeing some real red flags about how the director works. And maybe this has flaws in it because it was created by fucking people and it's doing shit we didn't want it to do. That's my theory. So I guess we'll see. But this poor guy who's all beaten up, he looks like hell. Whoever did the makeup on that guy, it is real looking. Sometimes like people who look like they've been beat up on TV, they are still too pretty. There's a lot of swelling that happens when you get beaten, you know, and they will leave that out and just do a lot of cuts and blood. But this guy looks like really swelled up. It's bad. And that's the end of the episode. So hell of an episode. Hell of a start to season 2. Shit. How many seasons are there to this show? I'm going to check this out right now. Let's see. Episodes. We got 3 seasons. Is it over, guys? Or are there more seasons to come? Do you guys know? If there's only 3, like, I'm partially kind of like, I want this to be over so that by the time I reach the end, it will be a complete story. Because I have to wait for more of Dark, and I'm real annoyed about it. But at the same time, I really like this show, and I would like it if it were longer. So, oh yeah. Hugabug says, "I love that Philip stayed at the hospital to wait with Trevor because that's what he would do for any of them." Totally. Yeah, that really got me in the moment when he said that. It was like, he would. And I was like, he would. You're right, Philip. I was surprised that nobody else was like, "You're making me feel real guilty here, dude. Yeah, all right, fine, I'll stay too." Everybody else was like, "All right, good for you, buddy. Bye." All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap. Thank you again very much to Michael for commissioning this episode and for making it a voyeur episode. That was really fun. I hope that you guys are enjoying listening, and I'll be seeing you again pretty soon, I think, with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.